Be great for Daniel's conversion to an audio file. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cubist. My name is Bill Corey. I'm the Cubist, and it is time for our next deep dive episode. I'm excited for this one. This is a near and dear one to my heart. So I'm excited to talk Power Grid with the Cubist crew. We have a somewhat abridged Cubist crew. Wow, holy crap. Let me try that again. Cubist crew. You know, I come up with this alliteration thing and then I can't say it. Oh, well. First off, we have Kimberly Rivia. Hello, Kimberly.
Hi, people.
How's it going?
Good.
Excellent. And we also have the man, the myth, the legend, the reason that there is an audio version of the show, Mr. Daniel Newman with us. Hello, Daniel.
Hey, that's me. How's it going, guys?
I am well. I'm wearing a silly hat. And I'm wearing a silly hat because this way I cannot help but remember to say right out the gate that I am on vacation next week. And where that would normally potentially cause the show to not happen, that we might, and by might I mean probably, will have a after dark alone and unsupervised episode next week with it'll be Kimberly's fault. So if you're checking this out the week that it's released, make sure to keep an eye on it next week too, because it'll be ridiculous and awesome. We did an after dark.
I can agree to one of those. It will at least be ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true. It'll be fun. We did an after dark early on in the run too, didn't we?
We did. That involved pajamas and alcohol and Carenza.
Yes. Oh, that's right. That was the Carenza episode. Oh boy, yeah, that one went south in a big hurry. It was fun, but whew. So
we were cozy.
Exactly. So expect more of the same next week. But in the meanwhile, let's do this week first. So it is time. So Kimberly ran a poll to ask to crowd search. Well, God, why can I not use words today? Crowdsource. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. Crowdsource what game she was going to talk about. What did they come up with, Kimberly?
I had people go ahead and vote between number 9, the Fox in the Forest, and Wordsy. And the Fox in the Forest won significantly. So,
all right.
Tonight I will be discussing that. But hold on, let me tweet.
Okay, we'll hold on and let you tweet
for the show.
Gotcha. Right. All right, cool. So how about you, Daniel? What have you played lately?
So I've been playing a lot of Rococo this last week. I learned it when Matt and Kimberly were up last weekend. And then Ann and I have been playing it this week. Played it like 3 times, I think, this week already. It's been a lot of fun, although I think I need to take a break from it because it's starting to feel a bit samey.
Gotcha.
Now that we've played it a few times.
For people that maybe haven't played it and have missed the boat, what would be the quick elevator pitch on Rococo? How does it work?
Sure. So you are collecting fabrics, silks, as well as thread and lace to make dresses and suits, and then you're either selling them for money or displaying them for kind of prestige. And then there's kind of an area control component where there's these different rooms, and whoever's got the most in those rooms gets points at the end of the game. So it's lots of little points for different area control bits. There's a little bit of kind of hand management as well.
Gotcha.
Matthias Kramer, I don't remember what years.
I'm going to say
2012 or something.
Yeah, that sounds about
maybe.
I think it's.
I thought it was newer than that. Is it that old? I mean, but I know that's not old. But
the reason that I think.
Verify.
Yeah, I was just say I'm looking it up right now. The reason that I was thinking 2013. I was close.
Okay.
Oh, right in the middle. I said 2014.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you know what it was? Pret-a-Porter came out first, right? Like Pret-a-Porter was the first. There were 2 dressmaking games that came out right around the same time. And the reason that I remember that was because that was 2010. Wow, Pret-a-Porter came out way earlier. Okay. I just remember all of the grumbling about dressmaking in board games, and this was the start of the whole yeah and that whole nonsense that
and then there was Patchwork of Quilt Show, and
right, yeah.
And
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can play games about farming, there's nothing, we've
managed
many
zombie games. games.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've made compelling topics about a million different topics that, let's face it, we don't really care about more often than not. Like I have no desire to go out and be a grain farmer. And yet
What?
Yeah, I know. Shocking, right? So, all right. So, but Rococo, you said you played it 3 times in the last week?
Yeah. Well, actually 4 times in the last week.
Wow. Okay.
A lot. So we've been doing Anne and I have been doing a 10 by 5 challenge because she likes to replay games in succession so that she remembers how to play them. We don't have to relearn them every month or whatever. Yep. So if we play one that hits, we'll just play it a bunch. So she and I have played it 3 times since I learned it last weekend.
Gotcha. And it sounds a little point salad-y. I haven't played it. I've always wanted to, and this is one that it is.
Yeah, a little bit. A lot of it's done at the end, though. You get almost no points in the middle of the game. There are a couple of cards you can pick up that'll give you kind of points here and there, but for the most part, it's all at the end. It's a lot of little points for little area control. Like you get 5 points for one room, 3 points for another room. You get a point every time you do a decoration space. A lot of little points at the end to calculate.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, I love the theme of this personally, just because it's something different. Like as Kimberly alluded to, I could go the rest of my life without hearing about another zombie game and be completely okay with that. And that's as somebody that likes Raxon, as an example.
Yes. Right.
There's nothing wrong with it, but there's also nothing wrong with stretching our boundaries a little bit and trying something different. So
it's nice to have a little bit of variety. Who would have thought, right?
Yeah. In a shocking turn of events, right? So
it's nice to not only have 2 or 3 themes to choose from sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Yeah. Like Mars as an example. I have, I'm just.
Hey, Mars is hot right now.
I know. We're going to get a million Mars games. You know that, right? It's coming.
Mars is the new zombies. What do we think of that?
Vitalis is working on a Mars game right now, actually.
Who?
Vitalis Lacerda. I think it's working on a Mars game right now. I was listening to
Mars is hot, guys. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh boy.
That's okay.
Yeah. I suppose it is still not zombies. So, all right, Daniel, on the Cubist scale, buy it, play it, forget it, or burn it for Rococo.
Oh, definitely buy it. It's solid. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a Michael Menzel joint art-wise, which I did not realize until just now.
Oh, I didn't realize that either.
Yeah, I really like his art style, which explains why I've always thought this was a good-looking game from the beginning, right? Like even if the theme isn't exactly your jam for whatever reason, it's visually, it's a gorgeous game. The way that the rooms are sort of drawn out, so you have this sort of cutaway of the building or whatever. I've always really dug that. So, and now when I see that it's him, that makes perfect sense. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, buy it. I think this one might move, and it looks like it's still available at quasi reasonable prices. No. Well, I mean, it's a little high compared to its MSRP when it first came out, but I don't know.
I was able to pick it up in a. How did I get it? Oh, somebody gave it to me in return for helping them create some sell sheets. Actually.
Gotcha. Well, that's a good way to get it.
He happened to have 2 copies. So he was like, here, I will give you this. And I was like, I will take it. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Free games are always good. So, all right, Kimberly, have you successfully tweeted?
I did a little bit ago.
Outstanding. So therefore, Fox in the Forest.
Would you like me to talk about it?
I would.
Okay, so I am going to talk about Fox in the Forest, which was formerly Wickage, which I play tested for the designer Joshua Burgle. Joshua's a friend. And I believe it is co-published by Foxtrot. Hi, Randy. And then I think Renegade is who gets it into the stores more so. I can't really speak to that. I think that's how the co-publishing thing works, though, right? I'm pretty sure Randy signed it. They print it. I don't know. Randy is in the chat. So. Yep. Yeah. And that's my cat, apparently. It is a 2-player only trick-taking game. And it's got these cute little foxes. I believe I left my copy at Matt's house. I was going to show you the art.
But no,
I'm sorry.
I know what it is.
Or Daniel has it.
Go,
Yeah.
go, Daniel.
There we go. So Randy says they developed it, did the art, Renegade handles distribution. So roughly what I assumed it was, yeah. I think that I played earlier forms of it as Wickage to the final, and it's not all that different. There we go, the Fox in the Forest.
There's Fox in the Forest.
Thank you, Daniel. It is a quick, easy little 2-player game. You play to 21. You play it in rounds, just like a traditional trick taker, but it actually works as 2 players.
Nice.
There are some trick takers that have that terrible 2-player variant, and I've never ever played another one that was worth playing. Not even a little bit, I don't think. This is pretty simple. There's a trump suit, just like there are in most trick-taking games. You play a card, then the next person plays the card. You have to play on suit if you can play on suit. There are powers on the odd cards, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just reading the chat too.
What?
I was reading the chat. Scroll down the side too.
Oh, gotcha.
Love you.
Oh my God.
But they have different powers. Like if you play a 1, then the other or if you play an 11, excuse me, I believe the other person has to play the highest card they have in that suit, or a 1, nothing in between. One of them, I believe it's the 5. You can switch out the trump suit with a suit in your hand. Pretty simple stuff. It plays well. You score points at the end of each round. It's like if you win 0 to 3 tricks, you get 6 points, 3 points, something like that. If you score in the mid-range, you end up getting no points or very low points. And if you score a lot, you get 6 points. So it takes 3 or 4 rounds to play, and you play until 21. It's quick, easy. The art's beautiful.
It is gorgeous.
That's really good.
I've got the BGG page pulled up on the other monitor over here and just looking at the art of the different suits. Very, very nice stuff.
Yeah, the animal art is really good.
Nice job.
It was art by Jennifer L. Meyer and Keith Fishnery. I absolutely bombed that name. Fishnery.
We're going to go with Pishnery.
Fishnery.
There you go.
Yes, I added an extra H, didn't I?
That's all right.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. Yeah, very, very pretty stuff. All right. Cubist, okay, so you said that it does not feel like other trick-taking games that have a 2-player variant that then sucks. This one actually feels like it works.
This one actually works. Yeah.
Right. And ignoring the fact that Randy is currently in the chat room.
And that Joshua is my friend. Yeah.
And that Joshua is your friend and whatever. And
that I play tested it as Wickage.
And you play tested it and whatnot. Ignoring all of those things, buy it, play it, forget it, or burn it.
It is a buy it if you like trick taking games. Yeah. Just in general, if you ever play 2-player and you enjoy trick taking, it's well worth the $15.
I would definitely second that as well.
Yeah, I had Daniel's copy at Origins, and people were hounding us. We couldn't walk down the hall without people being like,
because they only had like 20 or 30 copies at Origins. Yeah, and Renegade was the first stop for me.
And it sold out like instantly, pretty much.
Please, somebody in the chat room say that you also groaned at hounding about the box.
Yeah.
Thank you. Holy crap. Yeah. Yeah, this one. I love trick-taking games, and I find myself in 2-player situations a lot. So this is going to end up having to get in my collection sooner rather than later. I will not be at Gen Con, unfortunately, but
I got mine on Amazon.
Yeah, and what's funny is that so I always have the BGG page open for whatever game we're talking about over here, and on this one, I also look at the buy a copy section of the page, and on the left hand side it says sure, Amazon's got it and eBay's got it, and then somebody is selling a copy on the Geek Market for $50. I'm gonna be like, okay.
That must be a person who grabbed it at like Origins and saw the hype there, and
I got you.
That's predatory.
Yeah,
that's goofy, is what I hate.
I like the game.
Randy would probably not spend $50.
Yeah.
For the record, Randy, if you are able to sell them for $50, I hope that you do. That would be wonderful, because It's totally worth $50. Of course it is. You got it. So weirdly enough, I want to talk about a trick-taking game too. I got my copy of Trickster, Trickster Champions of Time. The Kickstarter just fulfilled in the last week or two. This is designed by Daniel Solis, friend of the show, has been on the show before, and Beth Sobel, darling of the art world of board games at the moment, did all the art for it. The best way that I know how to describe Trickster is it is technically speaking a trick-taking game, but it doesn't feel like one. So how it works is everybody's going to play a card, and every time you play a card, it'll have a special effect that you have to perform. And if you can't play, or if you led the trick and everyone could play, then you take the trick, and all those cards go face up into your tableau. And cards in your tableau will score at the end of the hand, and you don't want score. So everything in your tableau is a point against you, basically, unless you have the most of any one suit. So there are 8 different suits in the deck, and there's 7 cards of each suit. And if you have the most of any one suit, then you don't have to score yours and everybody else does. So there's either you don't want to take any cards, or you want to sort of shoot the moon per suit. So that way you don't have to worry about scoring, one or the other. And so, and the conceit of the game, and I guess the hook, is the first person can lead any card they want. The second person, that's the leader, by the way. The second person is called the trickster, and they can play whatever card they want, but the relationship of the second card to the first card determines what everyone else has to play. So for an example, if I played a red card and as the leader, and the trickster played a different red card, then everyone would have to play red cards. If I played a card of a character, like let's say I played a magician, and the trickster then played a magician, then everyone has to play magicians. And if I play like a red magician and the trickster plays a blue explorer, then everyone has to play something that doesn't match in either way. So that's the conceit, right? Is that the second person determines the terms of the trick for the rest of the table.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really clever in the way that it's done. And the neat thing about the game is that you use 7 roles, 7 characters, I guess, and there's 8 cards per character. So the deck is always 56 cards big, no matter what the player count is.
Okay.
But they give you, in the box, I'm going to say 20-some characters.
I think it's 21. Yeah.
21, yeah. So it's positioned sort of like a Dominion-esque sort of idea of building the deck before the game starts, right? Like you pick 7 characters that you think work well together, shuffle them up, and then there's your deck for this game. So there's lots and lots of variability in the ability, or in the way that the different cards will interact amongst each other, which I think is very clever. It provides a lot of replay, but we'll come back to that in a second, in a very small box. What I wanted to come back to is, here's my only concern. I think the game is exceedingly clever in the way that it's made, and I think it's gorgeous. Beth is my favorite artist currently going in gaming right now. Like, I just like her stuff all the time. Yeah, and she's an absolutely lovely person. So that doesn't hurt her case at all. But she's first and foremost very talented. She knows her stuff. The art's just really good. It's colorblind friendly. Everything about this game. Yeah, it absolutely does matter, because each suit is not only a color, but also a shape and a different background for the characters. So like
that also applies to Fox in the Forest. They are different shapes and colors.
Awesome. Yeah, this is just the thing that it should always be. No,
I agree.
We're getting there. Anyway, I think the game is incredibly clever. I am a little worried about how much actual fun it is, though. Like, once I really enjoyed it because I was enjoying exploring the mechanisms, but trick-taking games to me depend on a little bit of, and this is a personal taste thing, little bit of lightness and the ability to just kind of chat while you're playing. And this game forces you to engage really heavily mentally. Like, you really have to be on, like, figuring out what the cards do. And so I'm a little concerned that this game might be and maybe it was just my group. I think it might just be a slightly heavier than I typically want out of a trick-taking game, or at least heavier without it feeling random. Like you could just play whatever, but then you won't play well. I don't know. I like it. I'm not sure I love it yet.
That sounds like the fun part. That's what I get fun out of games. Is
right.
That way, right.
And I absolutely agree, but it depends on the game, right? Like one of my biggest criticism of Role Player, as an example, while I recognize that it is a very well designed game.
They really love Role Player.
Right. Here's the deal. Role Player is a great game that I think doesn't match its theme, right? Like I think mechanically it's awesome. The theme is silly, and then the game isn't.
Sagrada.
Mechanically, it's what?
Sagrada.
I'm losing that word, whatever.
Sagrada.
Okay, gotcha.
Dice puzzle.
Yeah, gotcha. So yeah, it's super puzzly, but the game wants to be silly fun, and that disconnect bothers me. And I think this game maybe has a similar vibe for me. Like I know that like this is a Daniel game all day. I absolutely could see Daniel really loving this.
Yeah.
But
Role Player or Trickster? Which are you talking about?
Trickster in this case.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I have it with me. Actually, I just haven't broken it out. What player count have you played with?
Okay, so I played it at 3 players where there's a weird variant where there's a dummy hand that is always the leader, and I played at 4. I have not played at a large player count yet.
Okay. I heard it's quite different with like, I guess you can play it with 2.
Yeah.
3, but it's a very different game, is what I was hearing.
So I actually think I liked 3 a little bit better, even though that's one of the variants, because the dummy hand is all face up, so you can see exactly what's going to be led to each trick, and therefore you can plan your hand a little bit better. If you're going to go full thinky, then you've got that extra information, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cobras, which is another trick-taking game that came out in the last year from the Zinsleys, does a similar thing where you have, in the variant, you have, I think, one pile that's face up and one that's face down. You can see at least one of the dummies. Maybe that's for the solo. Anyway, but it does a similar thing.
Gotcha. Anyway. So I guess my Cubist rating for Trickster right now, because it's just been fulfilled, and I don't know, I think for the retail, for the MSRP, I think it's probably a buy it just because there is so much depth. And I do think that this will make a great gateway game if you know people that know traditional trick-taking games. Like I live in Wisconsin where euchre and pinochle and sheep's head are like staples of adulthood, right? You're not allowed to leave your parents' house until you know how to play at least one of those games, I think.
I've only played one.
Yeah, well, you're not from Wisconsin. That's what I'm saying. This is a weird Midwest thing. But I think
Midwest is all about euchre. Yeah.
So I mean, I think that for people, if you have people in your life that are trick-taking game nuts and you want to get them into the hobby, this would be a great game for that. So if for no other reason, I think it's a good addition to your collection for that. It's also gorgeous. Like it's so pretty. I think it's a buy it, even though I'm not 100% sure it's going to be my favorite game, but I think it's clever enough that you should own it. It's good. Plus, it's so pretty. So there you go. So that's Trickster, Champions of Time. Yeah, it's a buy it. All right, let's do our deep dive. Look, we got through that part so fast. Kimberly, you should be so proud of us.
Because there weren't 35 of us.
I know, that's fair. Well, there you go. All right, so Tonight we are deep diving Power Grid. Power Grid, originally published, I believe, in 2004. Yep, 2004, the Friedman Freese Classic. I think this is the game that kind of put him on the map, right? Like, I mean, I feel like this is the game. Huh?
No pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Pun intended.
Yep. So this is the we're gonna talk about the old versus deluxe versions of the game later on, but just the family is started in 2004. This is the route building game, 2 to 6 players. The idea is that you're building power plants and then creating a network on the map of cities that you're going to power to make more money, to power more cities, to make more money, to hopefully win the game. That's basically the game. It's a little bit of an engine builder. Mostly it's map dominance, right? Like there's a fair amount of, trapping people in corners and building yourself in the efficient spaces while screwing over the other people on the map. I think that's really that, and playing a little bit of press your luck on the deck is pretty much the game. This has been in my top 10. Just to give everybody a baseline, Power Grid's been in my top 10 all-time games as long as I've been making top 10 all-time games lists.
Yeah, like likewise.
This is probably the oldest game that exists in my evergreen set. Now, having said that, compared to the new version has completely murdered the old version for me. So I'm going to have lots of opinions on that.
I just experienced the old version for the first time this weekend. So
yeah.
I've only played the old version. I've never played the one.
Oh, you poor son of a bitch.
Thank you. This is good that I have allies here, because I've said this to other people before and they're like, oh, it's an expensive expansion. Like, I don't think it is. This is one of the few games that prompted me to write a review on BGG. Wow. I never do that. And I actually did a written review of Power Grid, of the deluxe version. That I basically posited that I think it's Power Grid 2.0. I don't think that it's a deluxe version as much as it is just a refitting of the original. Yeah, and making it better basically in every way. But
I mean, that's what any reprinting should be of a game. If you're going to take the time to change anything, you should clean up a game. Yeah,
and Power Grid needed cleaning up. So
I'm really curious what the major differences are.
Okay, so here are the major differences. I can help with this. Number one, there's graphic design, massive changes.
The graphic design is very different.
Yeah, that's very different, and that's going to be a personal taste thing. I know a lot of people prefer the original because they like the darker color palettes. There we go.
I will say, if you remove that aspect of it, the graphic design is more helpful in the newer, significantly, but I understand that color and aesthetics differ for people, but the actual, this is how I can see the board and I know what to do, is significantly different.
I could not agree more. I absolutely agree. And Matt in the chat brings up a really good point, and we should start with this, is that Kimberly and I both, I think, have pretty clearly said that we think that the new version is head and shoulders above the old. We are in the minority. The internet consensus is definitely that the old version is better.
That's odd.
Which I don't get. Yeah, they're wrong. I agree. So back to Daniel's questions. Art and graphic design is one thing. The biggest mechanical change is that garbage no longer exists. Instead, there is natural gas, and that combines with oil for hybrid plants. Coal plants are always only coal.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
So, and then a related but slightly tangential change is that the power plant market, or the fuel market, is not just 3 per price category. It's tiered. So I think there's like 4 coal in the $1 slot, and then it gets rarer and rarer up to like only 1 or 2 in the higher ones.
Okay.
So,
all right.
I think those are the biggest changes. And then the map itself has been changed and fixed a little bit. The maps are physically different. Oh, and then there's the dollar rule. The
dollar thing in the new one is
the dollar rule. On the North American side of the map, the lowest numbered power plant available is always $1 minimum bid.
Okay.
Yep.
So therefore it keeps the plants moving. Now there's a reason, like if a plant isn't really a big upgrade for you, there's still a reason to maybe buy it, because if it's only $1 and it's a small upgrade, it doesn't hurt you, right?
Right.
Now there's a reason to do smaller incremental upgrades instead of just everybody stalling, waiting for the first good thing to drop.
That is a thing that can cause the game to play a little bit tighter too.
Yeah.
Because you are more likely to cycle through and keep more in balance. There was an abnormal amount of everybody just passing in the game we played this weekend, far more than I have ever seen in any of the other games of Power Grid I've played.
Right.
I think I've only ever played it 4, 5, and 6 players. I don't believe I've ever played less than that. So,
yeah,
you shouldn't. I don't think play less than 4.
Well, and see, now here's a funny thing. I have my friend Jay swears by. He loves Power Grid at 2-player.
Really?
He loves it as a 2-player. He's only played.
Yeah,
he's.
Maybe I'll try it sometime.
I know he was talking about the old version, But he says that the old version is great at 2 players when both people really know the game and you can just kind of bang the game out. I think that anytime you have a game that relies on auctions, 2-player is automatically like not a thing I want to do. So I just can't even imagine, but I guess.
It's like auctions, drafting, and typically trick taking. Those are usually not things that work well at 2-player.
Except for the fox in the forest.
They can be done, but typically they're not good.
Yeah.
There is a robots expansion for Power Grid that's supposed to help with 2-player. We can set up AI, and they're you mix and match them, so you can set up different AI, and that each one has a different rule for a different part of the game. I guess I haven't actually played it yet. I got it last year sometime. Just haven't had a chance, but I'm curious to see how that works.
Yeah.
But now I'm wondering if it works with the old version. I bought Power Grid in Switzerland in 2004.
Oh, wow.
So I have, and it actually says Funkenschlag, and the rules are all in German. So like I have strong sentimental attachment. I bought it on my honeymoon.
You bought it on your honeymoon, yeah.
So like, I'm not going to replace it.
Right.
And I don't know if I can justify owning 2 copies of Power Grid.
Yeah.
So,
well, to be fair, first off, Funkenschlag is a marginally different game than Power Grid.
Well, so there is a game called Funkenschlag. Then there was Power Grid, which was also released as Funkenschlag.
Okay.
Like the original Funkenschlag was like a crayon with rap building.
Gotcha. Okay.
But this is Power Grid because it says the exact same box art as the first edition of Power Grid.
I think I was under the impression that the game Funkenschlag was, even though it was the Power Grid progenitor, was slightly different as well. But I don't know that for sure.
I can't.
It seemed like I played Power Grid at Origins, and it was the original. I played with Patrick actually, and it was the original, was not deluxe, and it seemed to be the exact same game that I've always played.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
You're almost certainly right. I was just curious. Yeah.
Now,
But I know there is
Matt
another
also
game
points
called
out the map difference. Matthew says there is a map difference: Europe, USA versus America, Germany, in the new versus old. No, new versus old.
Yeah, new is Europe, right?
Okay.
Because mine is Germany. I always played the German map versus America. We just always played the German map.
I've never played the German.
I played. I think so. I owned the original Power Grid, and then I got rid of my copy when I got the deluxe version because I played the deluxe version. And I was like, well, this is just a better game. And then my old one went away. But I think I want to say that I played the American map way more often for some reason, and I don't know why.
I think I've actually played expansion maps the most. So
yeah, I have a bunch of expansion maps that I don't know if I've played, and now are they all compatible with both versions of the game?
Okay, so there is nothing about the map that is going to preclude you from using anything.
No,
but isn't the resource market is on the map?
Well, okay, you could put natural gas where garbage is, and just as long as you're using the new deck of cards, I don't see any reason why you couldn't.
Just swap out
scales. It also scales, right? Like differently for the different resources.
Yeah, but I don't think that's major. That's a minor thing.
I mean, you have components that will fill those spots. I think you're okay.
But like the tiered resource market where there's like more coal on the cheap end and then it gets rarer. I don't think that is as crucial, at least not for casual play. I think maybe
it would retool the plant cards to correspond with that. That there would be a link there, right?
Yeah, and there probably is a link. I'm just saying I don't think it would be so noticeable that it would throw your game wildly off. I think it's probably there, but just like any game where you have, just playing base Power Grid on those expansion maps, right? Like they definitely didn't retool the deck for every map,
right.
And the maps some of the maps prioritize certain resources. Other like if I recall correctly, doesn't the France map use lots of nukes, if I recall, or something like that? Like
if there's an area that you're not allowed to use nukes.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Like that.
Paul in the chat is saying that BGG sells the extra resources components that you'd need to use the old maps with the new base game. So that's the other thing, right? Is you could
probably patch your kit basically.
Yeah, you could patch it as well.
Yeah.
And here's okay. So here is my standpoint. First off, I want to talk about the whole expansion map thing because first off, I'm really surprised that there have been no maps released for the new version of the game, and I don't know if that's just because the backlash against it was so strong because there really was a lot of.
I'd only heard negative things about the deluxe version when it came out, which is why I never picked it up.
Right.
Like when I was listening to podcasts and stuff, they're like, "Oh yeah, no, deluxe is garbage." So, which is ironic since there's no garbage in deluxe.
Right.
But I just couldn't stay away from that.
Nice. Here's what I will say. I think that calling it a deluxe version of the game is a huge disservice to it. A huge disservice because it is not a deluxe version of the game. The power plant, like the city markers, went from being typical houses to being little generators, but who cares? That's not a big deal.
No, it's not a big deal.
The money went from being crappy paper money to crappy little plastic chip money, which is it is exactly as crappy as the other one. It's just a different flavor of crappy. So I think that that's not good either, but who cares?
I use Power Grid card money that I got from Arts Cow, I think, which is awesome. So much better than the paper.
I played it with poker chips instead of the money.
That works too.
Yeah. See, and that's the thing, right? Like nobody that I know plays Power Grid with the paper money that comes in the box unless they have checked it out from a game library at a convention they're attending. That's literally the only time I've ever played with
the paper money at Origins, actually.
Right, because you checked it out from the library, right?
No, I think it was maybe. I thought it was Patrick's copy because he usually brings his own games, right?
He usually brings a lot, yeah.
I think it was Patrick.
Well, Patrick's a weirdo. We've covered that on previous shows. So we like him.
We love you, Patrick.
Yeah, I think that. So the chat room, and for the record, I know that we can all see this already, but I'm doing this because people watching afterwards can't see what's being said in the chat. The chat room is pointing out.
For the podcast?
Yeah, exactly. The chat room is pointing out that there are new maps released every year for Power Grid, but.
Your 2F Spiel.
Yeah, but from 2F Spiel, and that's great. But does anybody playing Power Grid so much that they really feel like they need 27 maps? This is what I want to know.
I mean, maybe 10 years ago.
Hey.
No, I'm just saying there's so much out there right now that I don't think anybody's playing tons of expansion stuff for any games anymore.
I mean, maybe Hennig is, or somebody else. Maybe Friedemann is.
Well, sure. And don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that there is no value in those maps. I guess that to me, the argument that I have seen is that the new version is so different that the questions were, can I use these old maps with the new version? Yada, yada, yada. Yeah. My question is, why do you care? Like to me, it's valid. It's not useful. I just don't think that anybody's playing. I mean, well, I can't say that. It would be hard for me to imagine anybody playing Power Grid so often that they need to have 12 different maps to get enough variability.
I'd say that about most expansions for most games, honestly. But
unless the expansion is just adding stuff to an already base game, right? Like if it's a thing where you can just mix the expansion stuff in and it just gives you more of the same, that's fine. But boards are a different critter to me. Like,
yeah, but I think the boards in Power Grid definitely change the experience. They change the strategy of where you're going to build and all of that. Like, it's not just a different, I don't know.
Okay. So Jeff in the Woosley in the chat is saying that he has played it enough. That so I'd be curious, Jeff. While we'll move on and we'll come back to this in a second. But how many plays of Power Grid do you think you have across all the maps? I'm genuinely curious to hear this because it's good that we have somebody in the chat that does this. So let's back up a little bit. This game brings. I think this is the first game that used auctions as a driving at least the first game I played that used the auctions as a driving mechanism for a different style of game, right? Like this is not a pure auction game, but the auctions are one of the biggest components of what is essentially, to me, an area control game almost.
It's so funny because I don't think of it as an area control game at all. I think of it as like a logistics game almost, right? Like for me, it's always been about budgeting, right? Like the auction is just a small part. The resource management was way more important to me the main resource being your money, right?
Okay.
Like in the order in which things are done in the game,
Mhm.
like you have to make sure that you don't overbid on your plant.
Exactly.
Because you need money for resources. You don't want to spend too much on resources because you need to spend money for.
Yeah.
It's all about budgeting, right? And maximizing your ability to get everything you need to do the best you can that round, right?
Sure. And I think that I absolutely agree with that. I guess what I was saying is that to me, the winning and like the really dialed in and how you win that game is by having control over where on the map your network is going and how easy it is for you to expand your network. If you get backed into a corner and suddenly it becomes very cost ineffective for you to expand because you have to jump over a ton of people,
yeah,
you can put yourself out of the game in one turn.
Sure. Yeah, just don't do that.
So we had, I mean, I personally have had an experience of that. I was not the one who got screwed, but I was playing a game of Power Grid with a group of 5 people, I believe, at a convention. And one of the players put himself in a corner directly below me on the map.
Mm-hmm.
And then proceeded to only build toward the corner in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then got up and went to the flea market at the convention. And they told me they would be gone for 15 minutes, and it took like 2.5, 3 hours for them to actually be back and play the game.
What?
And there was literally one city that kept him from being blocked off. And I had gone back and asked him numerous times, like, hey, you can't just leave the game this much. So I blocked him off on my first turn. And he was screwed for a good. And then I also was the only one with money, so I wasn't building to the 7th city.
Okay.
Just to be a dick for a little bit, because then he literally could do nothing.
Well, first off, screw that guy for walking away and.
I was not happy. Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably. I'm not generally a particularly vengeful person, but I'd probably go out of my way to screw the guy over and again like that too. Yeah, I would be like, no, you're done.
I told him. I got up after a little while and went and found him and was like, hey, you said you'd be back. If you're not going to be back, I'm going to screw you.
Yeah.
And he didn't come back, and so and he just rage quit the game. So
yeah, whatever. On the bright side, I guess if somebody walks away from a game of Power Grid, it definitely will ruin the balance. But you can play past them, right? Like they just do nothing. It's possible. It's not awesome, but it's definitely possible. It will give an advantage to the people that are next to that person, but it's at least doable. I don't know. All right. So you guys both seem to look at this in terms, you folks, sorry, both seem to look at this in terms of the budgeting being the more important side of things, right? Like it's all about getting the correct plant and the correct resources for that plant.
Yeah.
And then and I always look at it as the map is key first. Right.
Oh, no.
Like,
I have always budgeted around the map. So I knew in my last game, I could tell that odds were really good that Matt was going to screw me fairly early on the map. So I just budgeted to be able to jump around him.
Right. Yep.
When I was buying in my auction, I didn't go up past my point because I knew that I was going to have to pay an extra go around fee of $13. So
you can usually predict who nearby you is going to get in your way, and you can kind of work around that and then kind of backtrack what money you need, what money you have. That's always how I put it. I've never thought of it as an area control game. It's interesting to think of it that way.
Yeah, and I think that maybe this is one of the strengths of the game, right? Is that there are definitely different ways that you can attack your style of play here, right? Like you can definitely look at this as just as resources first and map second. I absolutely look at this as map first too. I have even been known to jump empty cities to get stuff that I can see being contested 2 or 3 turns down the road, and then work my way back towards the interior of whatever that space is early. Because if you can stake out, if you can identify choke points, because you don't use every territory on the map in every game, there's always, parts of the map that are going to be tighter than others because this territory didn't get put in the game or whatever. I think that if you can identify those early and then build the outside of your network first and then work your way back in, you can play a much more aggressive strategy that way without having to rely on the resources, which I think is fun. Paul in the chat is mentioning that there will be a fabled expansion for Power Grid this year which is for both versions of the game, the old and new, which is fun. And it's a 3-game campaign. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that, actually.
Yeah, I like the idea of I always like the idea of campaign style anything. So, and that's coming out at Essence. So that means that at BGG we'll get to try it maybe. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so we talked about the replacing the money, right? Like the paper money getting replaced with chips and cards and whatever.
I highly recommend the card money.
Yeah, I think I like.
I've never played with the card money, but I can see that. Yeah.
Well, and this is what I was going to point out is that one of the things that I think so a lot of people get really frustrated at the end of a game of Power Grid, and that's because you'll get advice from every corner, right? Like everybody can do them. If somebody can do the math faster than you, they will be like, well, here's your cheapest build. This is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Whatever. And that comes from, and I'm normally, like in the El Grande episode 2 weeks ago, I railed against hidden trackable information. But secret money, I think, is kind of a big deal in Power Grid, because if for no other reason than it causes the rest of the table to shut up. Have you guys had the same experience? People can see how much money you have, and so they know what you can and can't build.
How can they see how much money you have? It is secret money.
Well, it's supposed to be. I'm saying that most of the games that I've seen, the money is not actually secret, especially if you start using poker chips.
Well, and if you use those little plastic chits, I put them under my phone, and then when we cleaned up, I forgot and moved my phone, and I still had all the chips.
Right. Well, and see, here's the problem with those plastic chips too, because they made them different colors based on the denominations. Mm-hmm. That's still not really secret unless you like have, if you have a Dixie cup, you can stick them in, I suppose, but then that's a pain in the butt.
I usually stick poker chips in my lap. Not that that's necessarily the best, but I also trade them out frequently so that they're higher. Instead of shut up, Bill.
Okie dokie.
I have tiny hands.
You do have tiny hands. That's fair. I would be.
See, Matt kept his in his hand because he has giant freaking hands.
But
that's not fair.
I have giant hands too, but Matt is somebody that fidgets with chips, which I freaking hate. So, like, no offense, another Matt. I love you, but so like I don't want to do that, because then I would fidget with the chips and then I would make a noise that would annoy myself. That would be terrible.
Cash.
Yeah. Oh boy. So
I'm telling you, the card money.
This is where I'm going with this. Your cards, if they all have uniform backs, so that way they do, then that's a winner to me.
Yeah, that does sound good.
Like that's a reason to do it, because I think that not playing with secret money slows the game way down at the end. Like it turns what should be a 2-hour game into a 3-hour game sometimes.
So I've played it at a restaurant at a meetup before a few times, and we always played it under napkins. We put our money under napkins too. So we've always found like a workaround, I guess, to hide our money. So it's not really been an issue.
Daniel, if you could figure out a way to tweet out the link to that, to the card money, like where you got that would be lovely.
Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, or something like that, or throw it in an email and I'll stick it in the show notes or something. And which is the thing that I say and then I never remember to do. So I'll try really hard.
It's not just you. I think that happens on a lot of shows.
Yeah, there you go.
Are we going to discuss Power Grid, the card game?
Well, I've never played it.
I've played it. I played it at 2 players only, I think. Which is not too bad.
It removes the map, right? So that's the key thing. I think it feels a lot like Power Grid, but it entirely removes the map.
Yeah, the auction feels very much the same. Resource gathering is different,
but not
kind of dynamic.
But it's not so different. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a bite-sized version of Power Grid.
Yeah, it is. Well. And then after playing it, I realized how much I like the map.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
That was literally, we played it and I was like, oh yeah, no, that definitely felt a little bit like Power Grid, but I missed the map. So
I don't ever.
Sorry, I'm looking for the Power Grid card.
Yeah, I don't ever want to play lighter versions of games I already like. Like this is just a thing with me. Like I cannot think of a single time where I have played a card game version of a board game that I love, or a dice game version or anything like that, and said, this is better. No, I lie. Nations, the dice game, I like better than I like Nations. That's the only one that I can think of off the top of my head. But other than that, and I think maybe the Settlers of Catan card game was like the 2-player one.
Oh.
Yeah, it was the old 2-player one. That's okay, but that doesn't feel like a card game version of the board game. That just feels like a game with the same
Like
theme.
a new game.
Yeah, it's a new game. That's definitely not the same.
I like Baby Agricola.
See, I haven't played All Creatures Big and Small yet. I also haven't played Cave versus Cave.
Cave versus Cave was really good. I've heard good things.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people raving about it. But to me, I would argue that a 2-player version, a 2-player game that isn't normally 2-player, is not the same as what what this feels like, right? Like Power Grid, the card game, just feels like, hey, we made a card game version of a board game.
I mean, so they're pointing out in the chat, it really isn't that much lighter. The weight level is still pretty much the same. It just removes the map.
Yeah, then I'm not interested. I'd rather just have the map.
I thought that I would like it because overall area control isn't my favorite thing. And even though I don't really think of Power Grid that way, it can impact the way other people play. And a couple of people I've played with, sometimes you want to hit them for that. So I thought maybe I would enjoy the card version a little bit more, and it just made me miss the map. So
yeah, agreed.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. There was one other thing that I was going to say, and then I forgot. I don't remember.
I would do some. If you're happy and you know what.
Yeah, there you go. So Power Grid is, like I said, it's an evergreen for me. This game has been some of the best gaming stories that I have come from playing this game, the old version and the new version. And so this is one where, okay, Kimberly, would you, if somebody were thinking about buying Power Grid right now, would you tell them to buy the deluxe version?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. See, and I would too. And I've had, even though there aren't all the maps and all that stuff, it doesn't have the native expandability, I guess. But I think it's just a better game.
I appreciate the little bit of streamlining that it's done.
Yeah. The math
you
is better.
You can't get the original anymore, can you? They only sell the deluxe.
Probably.
I don't know. I honestly don't know anything.
I mean, typically when they do that, that's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would assume as much. But
Power Grid.
I'll say this. There are copies currently available on Amazon of the old version.
$20 less.
Yeah, for not very expensive. So
I would recommend just getting the original.
Yeah, see, I think that the new version. The other thing about the new version is that they rejiggered the deck. So that way there are not objectively crap plants now. Like in the original deck, there are plants that no one ever buys.
Like the 3 coal for 1 power or whatever.
Yeah. No one's ever going to buy that, right? Like it's the only way. Oh, that's what we should talk about. We should talk, this is the thing I was trying to think of as player. Yeah, I can't. No one ever buys that plant, except for if they have oversold themselves on the idea that you have to go last, right? So here's one of the big criticisms.
This is true,
right? Everybody hammers on the fact that the person in last place gets to do things first, and whatever that person gets to do first or last or whatever is always at an advantage, right? So the person in last place is the last bidder.
That's why it changes depending on what it is, right?
Right. Yeah. They're last bidder in auctions, but they're first to buy resources and first to build on the map. All 3 of those are better. So, but I think that gets wildly oversold.
Absolutely.
I think that people fixate on that so much that they end up kneecapping themselves and playing suboptimally in an effort to always be in that position.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've won games and been in the lead the entire time.
Yep.
It was fine.
My dad is a huge Power Grid fan. It's one of his, matter of fact, he runs Power Grid tournaments at conventions, and he is a firm believer of just stomp on the gas and go, baby, go, play the best play. And he crushes people and they're like, wait, that's not supposed to work. And it's, well, and that's the thing. There's a lot of groupthink out there about this, right? Like I believe I was on. Oh yeah, I was on Board Games last year at BGG, and Bruce Vogue and I were on the show together. And Bruce was railing against Power Grid about how it's a game, it's a spreadsheet on a map where you just want to be in last place all the time, and that doesn't make any sense or whatever. And I'm like, no, it's not a thing.
It is a spreadsheet of a game, but it's not that you need to be in last.
No, you
definitely spreadsheet
in last. No,
you wind up paying a little more for resources. Then it's really it. Because even going last, you could have an advantage. I mean, so I'm trying to remember now. If you're in first place, you start the bidding on the auction,
yes.
right?
Yep.
So you could just keep putting up crappy plants and just hope they don't. Well, it's more tricky than that. But
I would argue that there is something of an advantage to bidding first, depending on the game state. I think that the auction phase is the phase of the game where player order is the least important to me, because you can manipulate the game state and work the plants through to get to the one that you want from first place if the cards are right. And if the cards aren't right, sometimes you go last and that card that gets flipped is something crappy that ends up being in the bottom four anyway, and the thing that you wanted didn't actually drop. You know, that's the only part of the game that has luck involved, right? So you can't really game that part too much anyway. Yeah, and I agree. I think that it's just a matter of I
think people do give too much weight to that one thing. Yeah.
Yep, for sure. The other thing that I have always understood when you I kind of want to crowdsource this one and ask you two and the chat room. If you are allowed to hold up to twice the fuel that a plant can use, right? The idea is that you can buy what it needs this turn and next turn.
Yes.
And that's it. How often do you find yourself buying to screw a player over?
I mean, I think people do it frequently.
Sure, I tend not to personally, because I don't play games that way generally.
I do occasionally, but I don't do it because I don't like feeling like I'm stuck with a specific kind of plant. If something really good comes up, I don't want to waste resources that I just bought.
Yeah.
I mean, and at most, you're only going to make somebody pay an extra like
$2. Yeah, $2 or $3. Like that's the worst.
Not, unless you're buying up like all the nuclear power and nobody else can get it, right? Because it's early in the game and nukes haven't gotten cheaper yet. Like, that would be the only thing that could really screw somebody.
Yeah,
I did get nuke blocked at one point last weekend.
That can happen.
That sounded weirder than it was probably supposed to.
I mean, it's me, Bill.
Yeah, that's fair. I see, and I never do this. The only time I buy extra is if it is never going to be cheaper because it's in the $1 brick, right? Cool. Like if the market has bottomed out on whatever it is, and therefore I can get it, and I know for a fact that no matter what happens, this will never be cheaper, then I will buy a double. But other than that, I never buy just to try and screw people over, because to me, I'm spending money I might be able to use elsewhere next turn in an effort to maybe cost somebody $1.
Yeah, I don't think it's a thing that most people do.
You don't do it to screw other people. It's to ensure that you're not going to pay a ton later. Like if the three of us are playing and we all have coal plants and I'm going first, I'm going to buy as much as I can because you guys are going to buy a bunch of coal. The next time it comes around, it's not going to be cheap enough for me.
Right.
Like that's when you stock up on it.
Right. And I absolutely, I guess I agree with that when it's like if the restock rate for a particular resource is very low.
It's lower than it's getting. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Then I see that as a reason. And occasionally I could see myself potentially doing that as well. But in general, I just don't know. It never seems, I would always rather have the money in hand. You know what I mean? Because that plant could theoretically get replaced unless it is clearly my best plant. You know, like I got an end game plant or whatever. So that way I know it's something I will have for the remainder of the game. Then I guess. If it powers
anything less than 6, I don't want to sink a bunch of anything into it because then I feel like I have to keep it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can transfer resources from one plant to another when you upgrade.
No, I mean, I feel like I need to keep that
plant. Right. Yeah.
This whole mechanic that we're talking about actually plays in well to why I think that Power Grid Deluxe is a fundamentally better game, because coal, although it can be cheaper, never transfers to anything else that isn't coal, right? Like unlike in the original game where coal and oil, right? Like if you have a hybrid plant, then you have options for days on where that's going to go.
Yep. And I'd often go for those because of that, because you have that flexibility.
Exactly. I think that because they shifted away from coal being part of the hybrid combination, I think it forces you to think a little bit more about buying extra of that, because the coal plants are, fundamentally wasteful by comparison, right? Like as far as resources go, they're cheaper, they're marginally cheaper, but they're never, I don't know. Seems like the efficiency numbers aren't ever quite as good. But which I'm okay with anyway, because that's how the real world is. No,
right.
Yeah. So
I like the full hybrid because it allows you to buy whatever's cheapest, right?
Yeah. That was the flexibility.
Sure.
But I assume it works the same way. And
it does between oil and natural gas in the new version.
But isn't natural gas start out a lot more expensive the way garbage does?
Not a lot more.
No, it's closer in price, I believe.
Yeah, they also changed the starting prices of a lot of things. Like they made them a lot more realistic.
Okay. Because garbage is tricky to use in the original. Because
I never used garbage.
Yeah. Well, and
once it gets low enough, and ideally the garbage plants would come out late enough in the game that it's worth it.
Right.
And you can get garbage, it replenishes faster. So
which is
cheaper.
And see, that plays back into what I was talking about there being some plants that were just objectively terrible too. Like early, like low numbered garbage plants, no one ever bought, because even with no competition, there's not enough garbage coming out to make it cost efficient compared to literally anything else.
Unless they come out later in the game. Like if they come out too early, then they're
right. But isn't there like a 6 plant or something like that? That's like one garbage.
There was one on the board pretty early in our last game.
And that can happen depending on what comes out. But I think it starts in the low teens, but I could be wrong.
Nah, I think there's one in the single digits.
Okay.
In the original
I
deck.
can't speak to that. I didn't pay that much attention.
Well, and that's the other thing, is that the fact that they released a different power plant deck for the old game, to me tells me that there was some math errors, just flat out. There was just some stuff that was wrong.
that happens.
Yeah. And
I think
this is
good when they try to fix the thing, personally.
Sure. And the expansion deck for old Power Grid definitely makes it a better game. Like I don't think I would play old Power Grid with the original deck. I just don't. There are so many. First off, there's that misprinted, I think it's the 29 plant that doesn't power enough cities. It's like a 1 for 3 or something like that, which is just hot garbage. But as soon as you make it into what it was supposed to be, which was a 4, and there's just math errors all over that first one that just makes some plants just objectively better or worse. And that's not okay. I don't know. The new version is so much better, especially since you're going to replace the money anyway. So complaining about the chip money is pointless because you're already going to do that.
I understand the gripe about the art. I like the art better in the original, but I like the graphic design better in the new.
Yeah, I don't think I care about the art that much. To me, it's such a non-issue.
Neither is like phenomenal or wildly different.
Yeah, it's not like either one of them is gorgeous, like a Rococo or a Pillars of the Earth or anything like that, where there's this really visually stunning board. It's a map,
Right.
It's.
I mean, I have strong sentimental attachment to it for other reasons, I guess, but I'm sure it's on the Power Grid map.
Well, it's good to have differing opinions as we go over it anyhow.
Yeah, I understand that feeling very well. I bought my copy of Carcassonne when I went to Essen in 2001. So like my old ass copy of Carcassonne that doesn't have the updated rules and is in an old beat to hell box, I'm never going to get rid of it, right? Because, well, I bought it in Germany. So I get that. That's for sure. So I don't know. I think this is one of those games. Last year at BGG, I met John from John Gets Games. We happened to be standing in line together for the dealer hall, and he had said something about having hated Power Grid. Like he had played it and he really didn't like it. He didn't understand why people liked it. And I said, well, let me teach you, because sometimes all you need is one person that likes to shout across the table at what you should be doing. I call it the blackjack conundrum, right? Like when you're sitting at a blackjack table and the guy on your left is telling you that you should hit or not hit and not letting you play your game because that's how card counting works. It sucks. It can suck the fun out of the game. I think it's the same thing here, right? Anytime you get somebody that just wants to bully the rest of the table, it can suck a lot of the fun out. So I
think that's how every game works.
Yeah, but
to some extent.
But games that have such a heavy spreadsheet feel to begin with,
it definitely is very math heavy. Yeah.
There's always an optimal move, right?
Sure. And it's just if other people can see it faster than you and are willing to shout it at you, especially, you know, and then they have a personal stake in it, right? So it's not even whether it's optimal or not.
Right.
They've got a dog in the fight. So then you start saying, well, wait, maybe I should just, you know, I think that'll just ruin the game experience for always. I just, in general, I hate that. So yeah, play Power Grid, but play with secret money always, always, always. And buy those cards.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played with open money. I think we've always found a workaround to make it hidden. So
yeah. I think I've almost always only played with open money because we didn't have the workaround for whatever it was. So I'm definitely going to go buy those cards on our discount. Two
cloth napkins do it too.
Yeah, I would get 2 sets.
Okay.
You have enough for a large player count.
Very good.
But I think I mapped it out and was like, oh, you really need at least this much. So. Yeah.
Of course you did, Daniel.
Yeah, of course.
That's how your brain works.
Everybody pinch Daniel's cheeks and tell him he's pretty. No?
Well, maybe he's pretty. I'll give him that half.
There you go.
Thanks, bro.
Cheek pinching is weird. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that is our deep dive on Power Grid. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can hit the show up at Cubist Podcast. We want to hear more if especially you're watching on the back end. What do you think of Power Grid? Do you like the old version or the new version? How do do you have feelings on the step on the gas pedal method versus the turn order?
Give them a specific hashtag so that we can review it easily.
Yeah, we'll just go with
like PG Deep Dive.
Yeah, PG Deep Dive. There you go. Hashtag PG Deep Dive. Use that hashtag and make sure to mention us, and we'd like to hear more from you. You can also always email thecubistpodcast@gmail.com, by the way, if you want to respond in a less Twitterific way. And don't forget thecubistpodcast.com. Go to the website. We work really hard on it. We sell merch. Buy merch. I don't care. There's also a link for the Patreon if you want to support the show on there. We love it. If people want to know more about us as humans, yeah, that's what I was originally going to say too, and that's a terrible idea. Thanks, Matt, for nothing. We're not saying that one out loud.
It's my fault. It's because I made the joke earlier.
There you go. All right. If people want to know more about us and what we do, Daniel, start with you. Where would they look?
I am on Twitter at DNLNWMN. That's my name without vowel. That's about it. That's where to find me.
And people should buy Ahead in the Clouds, right?
Oh, yeah, they should. Great. Fun shy game.
Buy it at Gen Con.
Ahead in the Clouds. I'll have a few copies on me, actually, at Gen Con.
Which I will too.
Tweet at me and tell me where you are, and I'll find you where you can find me.
It's very stockerific, but make that happen.
Yeah.
Perfect. Kimberly?
That's me. I am at KJ Revia on the Twitter, I think. And also on the Instagram.
How do you not know your Twitter handle?
Is there a J in it? There's a J in it, right?
Holy crap, yes. Jesus.
You should ask me my phone number sometime. It goes real well.
Please do not put your phone number into this video.
I do not tweet at myself, Billiard. At KJ Review. Oh my God, I can't say my own last name. Love you. You get the gist.
Dude, she's on the webs in places with stuff. Hey, so don't forget to check out the show next week, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just gonna publicly say it right now that they are doing the show. They will be alone and unsupervised, one way or the other. If I say it, then they have to do it now.
Oh, Daniel offered to help. So.
There you go.
And, might just be me and Kimberly.
Pajama party?
Oh boy. Ladies and gentlemen, you can find me on Twitter at Bill Corey Jr. or at Cubist Podcast as a show. The Cubist Podcast at gmail.com is where you can email us. Hit up thecubistpodcast.com for all of your Cubist related needs. I don't know what those might be, but spend money. We love you. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a great week. I will see you all in 2 weeks. I'm going to go float around on a houseboat in Utah.
Get it, Bill.
In the middle of a desert. I don't really know how that works, but that's
how
where
does that work?
Lake Powell, the country's largest man-made lake.
Okay.
This is where I will be. So there you go. All right, you guys. Everybody have a fantastic week. We will see you all, I guess, in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye.